Julian Washington against the King.
Yes.
May it please my Lord, I appear on behalf of the appellant, together with Ms. Amanda Clift Matthews and Mr. Vaughan Keynes of the Bermuda Bar, and Mr. Tom Poole, King's Counsel, and Mr. Carrington Mahoney appear on behalf of the respondent.
Mr. Carrington Mahoney, I think, is the Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions, and Mr. Carrington Mahoney, we're particularly grateful to you for your attendance.
Thank you, sir.
I should say we're grateful to all counsel and solicitors for the responses to the requests for assistance with which you've been bombarded in the last week. It's been of assistance to the court. Thank you.
Well, as my Lord knows, the appellant was given permission to appeal to this court at the beginning of May on the ground that the DNA evidence which supported his conviction was flawed. The respondent initially resisted the appeal, but then conceded that the ground was well-founded and indicated that there would be no opposition to the appeal. However, the respondent did not initially wish for the appellant to receive a reasoned judgment, and it was thought until Friday of last week that, in fact, the purpose of today's hearing would be to argue that he should.
Yes.
However, on Friday, we received notification that the respondent, upon reflection, no longer opposed the board providing a reasoned judgment. And so I'm in the board's hands now as to how you would wish us to proceed today.
Well, I was going to raise with you the present situation. As we understand it, Mr. Washington has been released from custody on the 3rd of May.
Yes, and he, as I understand it,
unconditional bail.
Yes, that is correct, my lord. And as I understand it, he's on a linking into these proceedings.
Right. The respondent now does not oppose the giving of reasons in a judgment, and it's also clear from the most recent correspondence that the respondent accepts the criticisms made of the DNA evidence in paragraph 13.1.128.
Yes. Yes.
I'm not sure what's left.
That's a very good question, Lord, because I don't think we've been sitting downstairs in the cafe discussing how we're going to fill the time this morning.
Any concerns if you're not able to fill the time?
Right. Well, Miss Cliff Matthews is ready, willing and able to summarise the appellant's arguments on the DNA ground, should the board wish her to do so.
But I think we would be assisted.
Yes.
Because it is technical, I think the board would be assisted if we could hear from Miss Cliff Matthews in relation to the DNA evidence, and particularly the points made in 13.1.128, which are, of course, then amplified later in the appellant's case.
Yes.
This is a highly technical matter.
It is, my lord. Well, I'll sit down and I'll hand over to Miss Cliff Matthews.
Yes, my lord, so this morning what I intended to do was to address you on the flaws in the DNA evidence.
The microphone probably needs to be turned more directly to you.
Okay. Yes, so I was going to address you on the flaws in the DNA evidence so that the court could appreciate the depth and the seriousness of those flaws. As you've already alluded to, we've illustrated a number of issues which are in paragraph 13.1 of our case, which is electronic bundle 2009, where we say that Ms. Zuliger of Trinity DNA Solutions did not follow good practice and employed a methodology that was not scientific. I will spend some time on two specific or areas of complaint because I think those are the most complicated, whereas the others are a little bit more self-explanatory. And those are arguments that relate to the amplification of multiple runs and the statistical calculation.
Amplification and what, sorry?
Right, so multiple runs, so aggregation. So the adding together of multiple amplification runs. So the DNA is amplified and there are results produced, there are sort of graphs produced which show various peaks. And in this case, 6 of those runs were conducted. And then whatever the results were of each of those runs were then added together to form, as it were, a composite profile.
And is that from 4 casings or from 6 casings?
Well, it's difficult because she doesn't mention anything. She doesn't say, but it looks like to me, when I look at what she's compiled, there's every single allele that's appeared in all of those runs has been included in this mix.
So we're talking about the 4 cases, JAH 1 to 3 and 5.
Yes.
From which was obtained a mixed profile
Yes, so
DNA from 3 different sources.
At least 3 different sources. There are reasons to think there are at least 4, but perhaps we could just stick to at least 3 for convenience sake, but yes.
It's the basic idea that if you've got a positive result one time you did the test, but negative result others, you counted that as a positive, as it were, in the composite, composite result.
In essence, that is exactly it. Yes, my lord. In fact, as I was going to come on to, if you actually looked at each of those runs individually, the appellant would have been excluded from each of those runs individually, but he happened to fall within the pool of alleles that resulted from the composite profile. So,
And just to be absolutely certain, the composite, you don't know whether the composite is taken from the 4 casings or from all 6 casings?
no, sorry, my lord, let me be clear. So the sampling of the DNA was taken from 4 casings. That was one swab over 4 casings. And then it was taken away back to Trinity DNA Solutions, where the DNA
So you mean they use the same, I don't know if it's a cotton wool
yes,
bud
cotton
or
wool
whatever.
bud, that's it.
Instead of using one cotton wool bud for each casing,
for each casing.
they take the cotton wool bud and swab
It all,
4
exactly,
casings.
my lady. And then it's taken back to the laboratory where the DNA is isolated, so that's on that swab or cotton wool bud. And then it's amplified, and the amplification process is what the analyst needs in order to make a comparison with a standard profile of DNA. So the amplification process produces a graph, or what's called an electropherogram, and on it will be peaks. And some of them will be real peaks, and some of them will not be.
Why?
I mean, perhaps it would be helpful, my lady, if I just take you through my submission. I was going to come to that. I think that would be, probably if I do it in
So
order,
when
it
you
might help.
amplify the DNA from the swab, what's the word amplify mean in that?
Yes, so what they do is they make, because they need to detect it, so what they do is it's complicated. They basically do these processes where they amplify, make it so that the peaks come up. It's basically
But they're not making more of the DNA, they're not reproducing
no, it's just how they read it.
It's how they, right.
Read it. Would you like to see an electropherogram, my lady, with that?
I would love to see an electropherogram.
Well, I'll take you to one that's straightforward.
So when you amplify it, are you changing the measurements on one of the axes so that what might have been just a line with very
Yes.
shallow wiggles is a more wiggly line?
Yes, exactly.
Right, okay.
And in this case, 2 types of test were used. And the second type of test, which is called the minifiler, is specifically designed for where you've got very small quantities of DNA because it amplifies even more.
Right.
So let me show you a picture of an electropherogram. If I could just take you to the scientific working group guidelines.
Which bundle do you want us to open up of the many we have?
That the main bundle.
Right, yeah, so if I give you both, I mean, I'm only going to refer to documents in the core bundle, but I will give both references to the electronic bundle and the core bundle. So if I just take you to one. So if I take you to, it's electronic bundle 2427, and then core bundle 432. You can see two little graphs there. There's no need to read the information, but you can see what you've got are peaks, and these are nice, clean profiles. You've got 4 peaks.
Sorry, I didn't get the page. I must have got the wrong page.
It's 2427.
2427, thank you.
Yeah.
And so when you take a swab from the 4 casings, one swab, and then you're amplifying at different locations, is that right? So
Different locations of the DNA molecule, yes. The ones that tend to show variability between humans.
and the difficulty is that they amalgamated the different locations, is that right? Or
No, my lord, what you would do is you would get, so there are 2 separate issues. The first is the sampling, that's the 4. So that was the sample. So everything that followed after that was on that composite sample.
yes?
So it was a composite to start with. And then what happened was the DNA testing, there was more aggregation to make a composite sample. So when they went through the process of trying to read the DNA, that is getting these electropherograms, those graphs, they combine them all together.
Right, and then presumably at some point somebody will take the suspect's DNA and do the same thing and then see if the peaks
exactly match. That's absolutely right. So in this, if you see where it says locus 1, you can see this is a 2-person, it's got 2 contributors because you've got 4 alleles. Each person can donate up to a maximum of 2 at each locus. And what was standard at this period, in this period of time, was that 15 loci were tested.
Can you help me in this? When you say locus or location,
Yes.
what are you referring to?
So I'm referring
You're not referring to the different casings.
No, my lord. I'm referring to the parts of the DNA molecule that are tested. So a locus is just a designation of a part of the DNA molecule that is tested.
So presumably what you're focusing on are those parts of the DNA molecule which are different for every human being.
Exactly.
Because most of the DNA molecule will be identical.
Yes.
So you've got to identify where the DNA molecule is different for every person.
Yes.
And those are we know from scientific development that those are the particular locuses, or whatever the
Yes, I'm told it's loci. Yes.
Which you need to focus on if you want to see whether
That's
actually
right.
there's a match.
That's exactly it. So these are they're specifically selected sort of industry-wide because this is where you get the most variation between individuals, and they will be not unique to an individual, but the statistical chances of someone having exactly the same profile is obviously very low. And then just looking at locus 2, so this is...
Before you go to locus 2, so locus 1, would the first 2 peaks be one person and the next 2 peaks be the other person?
Well, what you see here is the example of an indistinguishable mixture. So sometimes, if you go to I can show you major minor donor. Let me see where a good page for that. So if you turn to page 2437, core bundle 442.
Sorry, 2442.
So core bundle 442, electronic bundle 2437.
We just work off the electronic.
Yeah, I don't know. We've got a core bundle and not electronically.
No problem, my lord.
Yeah.
So there you can see the peak heights are very different. And so what the analyst would say there is, well, you've got a major donor, and that's obviously the contributor with the high peaks, and you've got a minor donor. But the one that we were looking at before on page 2427, it's what you call an indistinguishable mixture.
So you don't know who they are attributable.
So you don't know which contributor has donated it.
So if you look at the one on 2437, you say, well, there must be two people because one of those people has got a lot at locus 1 and one of those people has got very little at locus 1.
Well, yes, that's one interpretation, and I will come on to false peaks in a moment.
Right.
And just to show you locus 2 below, here is where what's
We're
happening.
back at 2427.
Sorry, yes, 2427. So this is an example of where either one of the contributors shares another peak allele with another contributor. So there's a shared one, which is why you've got that huge peak at number 30. Or it means one of the contributors has got a 30-30 at that locus, so a 30 allele and another 30 allele, so it's got a double.
Sorry, I didn't understand that.
Yeah, so I think each locus, my lady, which is the part of the molecule that you are testing, an individual can contribute a maximum of 2 alleles.
Yeah.
Yes,
And so you might have 2 contributing to the large peak. I've understood that.
Yes, that's
what
right.
What was the next bit?
But you could also have one person contributing to the large peak. So the 2 alleles together could be a 30 and another 30.
I see. So it might be 2 people with 30 each, or one person with 60 and one person with 0,
Yes,
for example.
yes.
Yeah.
So that's what the analyst is looking at. If I could just ask you to turn to one more page. Let's see, that would be a good picture of it. Yes, 2485.
2485.
2435 or 05?
85.
85.
So there you can see another graph, and you can see 2 large peaks. But what you can see at the bottom is sort of mini peaks, these mini jagged peaks. And the smaller the amount of DNA, the harder it is to distinguish between what are real peaks and what are not real peaks. So an analyst would have to decide whether those little jagged peaks were real peaks or not.
Right. But
Say number 10 or number 9 or number 8, those
Yes,
little rises, that could just be an artifact.
An artifact, and that's exactly what they're
But then
called.
if you amplified that, then presumably those peaks would be much bigger and they would...
Well, the mini filer is intended to do that,
Yeah.
To amplify even more, yes.
So what does each peak actually represent?
So it's the genetic material. So it's an allele. It's called an allele, and you get one from your mother and one from your father at part of
And
the
the
DNA.
alleles made up of blocks of material, is that right?
Yes.
So, and the number of blocks can differ, can they, in each allele? Or not?
Yes, if you've got a mixture, yes, they can, what you expect to see. But they can differ also with a single profile. But as I said, it's a maximum of 2.
Yeah. Oh, I see. You get 2 alleles, but is each allele a representation of the number of blocks of material at that particular location? Right. And you can have 17 blocks or 14 blocks.
Exactly, and that's what the number is usually. Yes, my
Well, the numbers along the bottom, are they loci?
No, those are the blocks, as
Those are the blocks.
said, yes.
Right.
The loci or the loci, that is the whole thing. That's the picture that you get.
This
from the whole
this is the map of one locus.
Yes, exactly.
And so to match somebody, for instance, at this particular loci, or location, whatever, anyway, there is a peak at 12.
And there is a peak at 11, yes.
And a peak at 11. So you're looking to see whether or not the suspect has an exactly similar...
If you have a single profile, that is exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
So you would get 15 of these loci,
Right.
pictures at 15 loci, and you would compare the peaks
Right.
at each of them with the
Right.
suspect's
Right.
profile.
Okay.
And if there was one allele that didn't match, then that person would be excluded.
Right. Okay. And it has to match by...
Excluded. So in
Both alleles have to match.
a single profile,
single
yes,
profile.
they have to all match the person of interest. The position is different with a mixture because you're going to have more than one person's
Yeah.
profile within the mixture.
Right.
So you can't do that process. And the only way you can decide whether someone is included in the mixture or not is by what is missing.
And there would be a
That's
mixture
missing.
because 2 or 3 people may have handled the same casing and
That's
you
right.
can't tell, and their DNA has become
Yes.
merged. And so.
That's it, because there's no variability in the peak height. I showed you the one of the major and the minor donor, where there's no variability in the peak height. Yes, you can't tell which contributor it came from.
What does stochastic threshold?
It's a threshold by which the laboratory decides that the minimum peak height that it has to be, not to be background noise, as it were.
Oh, I see. So if it doesn't make it up to that threshold, it's excluded.
It's usually excluded, yeah. I mean, I say that there are circumstances where it isn't, and when you come to very small amounts of DNA, but basically that is it. You don't count anything below that line.
And so the numbers at the bottom are 10, 11, 12. They represent the number of blocks in a particular allele. And the numbers on the left-hand side then are what?
They're just the height of the peaks, and there are ways in which you can use peak height just, as I said, to determine who's the major and minor profile. It is also used, if you have the right protocols, sometimes to work out what are these artifacts, which I will also show you a picture of. So they're used for a number, heights are used for a number of things.
But if you
Sorry, I'm not following the significance of the numbers along the bottom.
So
The scale at the side represents the
height of the peak.
the height of peak, which indicates the presence of a particular allele.
Sorry, my lord, could you just say that again?
The scale at the side, the vertical
Yes.
scale at the side, represents
The size of the allele.
the size
Size.
of the
And
allele.
so the more genetic material you contribute to that locus, the greater the peak is going to be.
But the numbers along the bottom are not the locus.
No,
They're types of material, is that right?
They are types of material. They are blocks. I mean, I think that's a very good way to describe it. People have different amounts of blocks at these loci.
Thank you.
So the height of the material is dependent upon what? Whether the sample is degraded, or does it depend on what?
So yes, it can depend on many, many things. I mean, it can depend on the amount of DNA that's present and has been contributed by someone. It can depend on the quality of the DNA. So if it's a very small amount, the peaks tend to be less. If it's degraded, as you say, again, the peaks tend to be less.
But if you were to amplify it, then you would just make the vertical scale sort of 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and then those peaks would then become
Well, as I understand it, my lady, that there is a maximum that you can amplify.
yes.
So the whole system otherwise it becomes overblown. I don't know why that is caused, but there is a maximum that you can amplify, and there is sort of a sweet spot where you have to get the right degree of amplification where you can see these peaks, but then it doesn't just become a complete unreadable mess.
So when you're comparing the sample with the suspect's DNA, the height isn't necessarily determinative. It's not, because it's the location loci.
It would only be determinative if there was a clear major and minor profile.
Yeah,
But it's not determinative, the height, no.
yeah.
It's the type of material which is determinative. Is that right? It's the type of material which is determinative.
Which is determined type. Blocks is a good way to describe it.
And the significance of 11 and 12 in the picture we're looking at.
Yes, that is the number of blocks that they have of this type of material.
At this
Kind of
locus.
DNA.
So you would say this person has of type 11 and 12 material in locus, whatever
Yes,
this is, they have more than 200 on the scale.
Yes, that is it, my lady.
So then if you looked at somebody at the suspect's DNA and they also had 11 and 12
Peaks like that.
peaks
Yes.
like that, then you would say
You would say it's a match at that
it's a
level.
match, right?
But you wouldn't necessarily require it to be over 200.
Well, yes, normally there is, well, it wouldn't have to be over 200, no. It's normally much lower than that, but there will be a minimum threshold that each laboratory has,
Right.
where they just discount anything below that level.
And what's the minimum threshold?
They vary between laboratory, because they have to do multiple tests to work out what that threshold should be. So it varies from one to one, and it will vary from what type of test kit, between the test kits they're using and so
But
forth.
the difficulty if it's multiple DNA is that you can't tell, looking at the peak at 11, whether it's one person who's got 200 or it's two people who've got...
No, you couldn't, my lady, and that's one of the problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the example that we're looking at, we're told that all data is above the stochastic threshold.
So in that case, I mean, must be in that case that it is. I don't know where the stochastic threshold is in that graph.
So the line we see along
Yes, it's not the.
bouncing along the bottom of the
Yes.
graph.
That's
That's above the
that
threshold.
seems to be, yes.
Yes, thank you.
So, I mean, one of the problems with this DNA sample that made it so difficult to interpret was that it was a very, very small amount. And that's called low template DNA, and that is notoriously known by DNA analysis as difficult to interpret. And just to give you some...
Low, what did you say? Low...
So analysts
Yeah.
know that low template, it's a known category.
Yes,
of
but just
result.
what was the phrase? Low,
Low template DNA.
low template DNA.
And just to give you some perspective as to how much, there was the very small amount was 26 picograms, which I'm told is a picogram is a trillionth of a gram. But to put it into better perspective in DNA terms, at the time, it was thought that a minimum of 100 to 200 was probably necessary to get interpretable results. I mean, it wasn't a fixed line, because if you had a good profile, you might be able to interpret less, and it didn't mean that everything above 100 to 200 would be readable, but that was the sort of general consensus.
And is that because the casing of the bullet is shiny, so
does,
not much
DNA
skin gets off?
adheres to it,
finger?
yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And that was her explanation for swabbing them. That was the analyst's explanation for swabbing all four of them together, because on a single casing, you would get practically nothing.
And was there evidence that all the casings had been fired from the same gun?
Yes.
Right.
And in fact, there were, if I can just take you to her report, there were 6 casings. So if I could take you to page 1890. So this is the report that she produced. And you can see it's dated the 14th of February. And if you look down the items of physical evidence, second from the bottom, you can see there are swab casings JAH 1 to 35, and they're the casings that we're talking about.
Yes.
And underneath that, you will see MP1 and MP2. They are also casings. They were all found at the scene and all fired from the same gun. But it just so happened that 2 were seized by one officer and 4 were seized by another. And that seems to have been the only explanation as to why they were swabbed separately.
And is the MP, is that the initials of the officer?
It is.
Right. Who's responsible then for continuity of...
Yes, exactly, of the exhibits, those particular exhibits. And then if we turn over the page...
So, sorry, if they've been found by the same officer, they could all have been...
That may well have happened.
6 swabs.
I mean, I'm not saying that's...
might never have had this.
Yeah, no, my lady, I'm saying they should have been swabbed
No,
individually.
I know you are.
Yes.
Then there would have been too little DNA to find anything on each of them.
Yeah. Almost certainly, yes. Yes, so there were. So if you can see the highlighted section, that's sample 120015, and it basically says, a DNA mixture consistent with originating from at least 3 individuals was obtained at 13 loci. So 15 were tested, 2 loci no alleles appeared, but at 13 alleles did appear. The profiles of the major and minor donors could not be determined, so it was an indistinguishable mixture. And there you have the appellant is included as a possible contributor to the mixture. And then she gives a statistical calculation for the likelihood of falling within this DNA sample as being 1 in 46 million in the Bermuda black population. And if you go down beneath that, you can see the sample, core swab casings 1 and 2, and that was also a mixture from 2 individuals, but as I understand it, it was a good quality profile was yielded. It didn't suffer from being low template DNA. And as she says, it did not match any of the profiles associated with the case so far, so that includes the appellant. So he was excluded from those 2, from contributing to the DNA on 2 casings, but the 4 JAH casings he was said to have been a contributor to those, a possible contributor, I should say.
Do we know anything about JAH4?
Sorry, I think it was just another item.
I see.
Yeah, actually, it may have been the bullet.
Right.
That may have been it. Or a bullet that hadn't been fired.
Thank you.
If you look at her chart, then it's 1892. And you can see, if you look at 2 rows down, you can see the list of the appellant's alleles. And if you go second to the bottom, you can see there's swab casings JH 1 to 3 and 5. And there you can see all the alleles that she said she saw at these loci.
So just take me through that again, would you please?
Yes, so what the expert will often do is just produce a table to show what the alleles at each loci are for the person of interest, and then what the alleles that have been seen at those same loci for the sample. And then you would make a comparison of the numbers.
So the top row, that D...
Yes, so those are the names.
Of the loci.
That's it, they're their names. Numbers really.
So
But
the sample name is actually the title of the column rather than of the row.
Yes, that's right. And so you can see, yes, the samples for individuals.
The sample name then is what? D8 is the first one, is that right?
So that is the locus.
That's the locus.
Yeah.
The sample name is Stephen Burgess.
Yes.
Cubic.
Okay.
That's Stephen Burgess. He's actually the victim in this case. And his sample has a different number, as you can see, as 120011.
Right, so that's his sample name, but the tops of the columns, those are the loci.
Those are the loci, yes.
Right. And then taking Mr. Washington, the first reading then is 14. Is that taken from the sample of the 4 casings?
No,
No,
That's his own particular
and it
sample.
the sample from the casings, which
And-
is JAH 1 to 3 and 5.
That's right. So at that loci, that locus, you can see that there is correspondence between his alleles
Yes,
and
got it.
the swab casings.
Well, except for the asterisk, which
Well,
says...
yes, I am going to talk about that as well, my lady.
But if the asterisk wasn't there, you would say, okay, so at locus D8, whatever, 5119,
Corresponds.
Corresponds,
well, that he has, from his, what we got from him, he's got 14 blocks of material at that locus, and the person...
So did the sample.
So did the sample.
That's right. And that
So did
asterisk,
most of the others.
Except that you don't know with the sample one whether those 14 are actually all from one person or whether there were 7 from each person.
you don't know who donated each of those numbers.
Right.
So you can't say, oh, it must have come from the appellant. You don't know that. I just wanted to, well, as you pointed out, that one, my lady, that particular locus, if you can see the 14 asterisks, the asterisk means that there's possible alleles below the threshold, which means that there can be some genetic material is seen, but it isn't sufficiently clear to show a peak. But there's a strong suspicion that they can see that there probably are alleles at this locus, but they just, with the small amount of DNA, they haven't come up in the magnification process.
Wouldn't there be then a qualitative exercise to say, all right, well, he's got 14 all by himself, we know from the sample from him, and we know that the swab casings has got at least 2 people, so is there a statistical database that tells you, well, actually, we know practically everybody has got at least 3 there, so the most he could have is 11, so it's probably not a match. Or are there enough people? Do you see what I mean? If the 14 is an aggregate, then in all of a number of different sorts of DNA.
So my lady, when I say an aggregate, what I mean is she will have produced. You've seen that one line of where she's given a list of alleles.
Yes.
These alleles will not have come from the same amplification run. So she just takes the numbers. So it's not like the numbers are added to each other. She just.
No, I understand, but the 14 of the swab casings, that I thought you said that we don't know whether that, or do we know whether that 14 has all come from one of the contributors to the swab?
We don't, my lady.
Right. So in order to be a match, if there are 2 people contributing to the swab, in order to be a match, then it would have to be all 14 from Julian Washington, and the other person, whoever they may be, has got 0 there.
That's absolutely right.
But then if we know that across the whole population of people in Bermuda, everybody's got at least some D85179, but I don't, then it's not really a match because all those 14 are very, very unlikely to be from him.
So this is when it comes down to the statistical analysis.
Yes.
And what you're measuring is not really a match, but you're measuring could the suspect or person of interest alleles fall within that pool of alleles that we've got altogether.
I would be helped if I could see the actual swab casings result, which throws up 14. How she arrives at that figure.
Yes, well, maybe I should just go straight there then, my lord, to Dan Crane's, Dr. Crane's report, because he sets out some tables. That is it starts from 1789. Actually, might be helpful if just before that, I take you to the. Have you received, my lord, the appellant's supplemental bundle?
Can I just ask before we leave the 1892, the number 14, does that represent a quantity?
Yes, in terms of blocks, a number of blocks.
A number of blocks, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sorry, if I could just show you, I'm taking this from the Royal Society Forensic DNA Analysis, and I can actually recommend it, my lord, if you are wanting something simple to explain DNA analysis. This is actually intended for the courts, and it's very helpful.
Oh, it's one of the Royal Society publications for judges, is it, and lawyers that they've done? Or?
I think so. So yes, it helps. Yes, indeed.
So where is it? Sorry.
So if I could take you, so in the supplemental bundle, it's page 45.
The first one or the second? The second supplemental.
Sorry, it's second supplemental bundle. The first one is included in the
Sorry, so bear with me a moment. The second supplemental bundle at page 45.
5. So you can see that at the top it says interpreting DNA profiles. The next paragraph down, it gives examples of the type of complex DNA samples. So they include less than the optimal amount of DNA present, low template, which is the situation we have here. A mixed DNA profile where the number of contributors is unclear. We also have that here. And it says if you go down to the next paragraph, in a complex DNA profile, the scientists will often observe small peaks that are close to the baseline of the graph. This will mean there will be ambiguity regarding what constitutes a true allele rather than an artifact of the analysis. There will also be uncertainty in defining the number of possible contributors to the mixture. And then it gives quite a good picture on the next page of the type of artifacts that you can see. So on 46, you can see these are just examples of artifacts: stutters, A-peaks, pull-up. And these are all things that can lead an analyst to confuse what is just an effect of the amplification process with a true allele. And they look quite clear in there as different from the peaks, but when in reality it is quite difficult, particularly with low template DNA, to distinguish between them. So if I could show you what she did, then that might help. If I could take you then, sorry, to Dr. Crane's report at 1789. And this is so he sets out the results of each of the amplification runs, or just test runs for short. There are two different tables because there are two different test kits. And the first test kit tests 15 loci. That's the identifier. And she did 2 test runs of that test kit. And then the second test kit is what's called...
So just before we move off that, so the first test run, for instance, at D135 S317, she gets 2 results, 11 and 13.
No, sorry, the top row is Mr. Washington's.
Is Mr. Washington's.
And below that, so she actually gets an 11 twice. So in the first run, she gets an 11, and she also gets 1 in the second run.
Right. So,
sorry, but why has it got 11 and 13 then?
No, that's Mr. Washington's profile. If you look on the right-hand side.
But was that 2 runs?
oh, I see. No, I understand. You've got 2 LAs at each location.
Yes, that's
and
right.
So she gets a 14 and a 14,
Yeah.
and a 28 and a 28. So those are the 2 locations.
Yes, my lord, that's right. And so that's what she got for his sample.
Okay, and she does, and the second.
Yes, and then if you look at on that, you can see his profile has 14 and 14, and if you look down, you can see that corresponds with the identifier 2, where there's a single 14.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what she would be making that kind of comparison. But if you turn over the page to the mini-filer, and here there were 4 test runs, and he's labelled them Dr. Crane, mini-filer 1, 2, 3, and 4. And again, you've got the appellant's alleles listed at the top. This test is only able to test 8 of the loci, whereas the identifier can test 15.
So you're contrasting. Take the first one, D13,
Yeah.
S317.
Yes. So you can see that at that first locus, the 13 isn't there for Mr. Washington. If you take mini-filer 1, at D13S317.
It's constantly 12, is that right?
Yes, that's right, my lord. And if
Apart from...
yes, mini-filer 4.
And then she rounds it up to 13, is that right, or what?
Well, you can see at the bottom there is a 13 in mini-filer 4. So that same locus that we were looking at, D13S317.
Yeah.
If you look at mini-filer 4, the last of those test runs, you will see that what she says she's detected is an 11 and a 12, which have come up in the previous test, but also a 13.
And so she says, he also had a 13, but you say it's wrong to say.
Well, that's it, my lady. What we're saying is there are only 2 explanations there. And there's one explanation is that it dropped out of the other runs, what they call dropout, and that simply means it wasn't detected, or it was not a real peak. And there's no need for you to go to it, my lord, but that 13 doesn't appear in the identifier tests either. So that 13 appears in 1 out of 6 runs only.
Just that 13 doesn't appear in the identifier.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
It's just 11, isn't that right?
Yes, it's just 11.
So it's on 1 occasion out of 6.
So that could be a pull-up, did you say?
Yes, my lady. One of those artifacts.
And that would be too unreliable, you wouldn't?
Well, the problem, my lady, is that she assumed every single allele that she saw in all of these test runs was a genuine allele. And that is...
So it might be there, and it might just not have been caught by the first 3 tests.
The first 5 tests.
First 5 tests, or it might not be there, in which case that's a false...
Yes, my lady, that's exactly it. So those are the 2 conclusions that you can draw. And this is a known feature of DNA analysis. This is not something that's unusual for experts. So one way that they've developed to try and deal with this problem, and how do you reconcile 6 different sets of results? And that is replication, or reproducibility. So if it appears more than once, they treat it as a true allele.
So it's got to appear twice.
Yes,
Yep.
that's some laboratories, that's what they do.
On the basis it's very unlikely to have it appearing a false appearance on 2 occasions.
2 occasions, because these are random. These aren't, random occurrences. There's no particular reason for them. So that is what she did. And then, so she's assumed that all of these are true alleles, and where the test runs don't match, she's saying those alleles have just not been detected.
And just going back, if you only had an 11 and you didn't have a 13, what would be the significance of that? If you only picked up 1 allele, and how would that, and you discarded the 13 entirely,
Yes.
would that exclude the suspect, or would the suspect still be in the frame?
Well, there are 2 schools of thought on this.
Yeah.
One of which is that if you know or suspect that there has been what you call alleles not detected,
Yeah, there must be. There must be a second one.
you would conclude it's inconclusive.
Right.
Or you would, because you don't know what was there, or you would exclude the suspect.
Okay.
I think Dr. Crane and Dr. Llewellyn both prefer the conclusion that the profile as a whole, because the results were inconsistent in this way, was inconclusive. But Dr. Crane...
They would prefer inconclusive rather than exclude.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah.
That's what they're saying. They basically wouldn't attempt to interpret these results. They basically say this sample is just too poor. It would be unreliable to try and interpret it.
So looking at D2S1338, where Mr. Washington has a 20 and a 23, there's all sorts of things have come out in the mini-filer,
Yes.
none of which is a 23 except for the final one. Yes. And then there are those other figures which he doesn't have.
Yes, that's right.
Right.
So they're presumed to come from other contributors.
Right.
And just I've given you the example of that 113 that appeared in 1 of the 6 test runs, but actually what happens is there are 5 loci that don't fully that correspond with the appellant only because a peak appeared once. So in 5 out of 11 cases, the peak appeared in 1 out of 6 test runs.
And how much of this was explained to the jury?
Absolutely nothing. None of it. A very simplistic explanation was given to the jury, probably akin to interpreting a sort of single profile, because in fact single profiles are quite straightforward. There's not a huge degree of subjectivity in interpreting them.
But
I mean, your objection is more fundamental. It shouldn't have been evidence before the jury at all.
That's exactly it, my lord.
But given that it's a gun casing, is it strange that there's more than one person has handled it? I mean,
yes, my lady, and yes, I mean,
because you would think that
you would
whoever
think.
has the gun, loads the gun, shoots the gun. So how is there more than one person's DNA?
Yes, well, I assume other people have handled that ammunition at some point, and in fact, in 2 of the casings, it was one of the victims that had there was a complete match to one of the victims in the MP1 and MP2 casings, those 2 separate casings.
But when the bullet is fired from the gun, I would have thought it reaches a very high temperature. It's just a guess. But does that, if someone's handled the bullet before it's put into the gun and the gun is then fired, will that DNA remain on the casing?
That's a good question. It may well be not very good quality, because one of the things that DNA does, respond to heat. And so it might be that is one of the reasons why there is so little DNA on that bullet. I know that samples have to be kept at a particular temperature and so forth. So it may well have an effect, but I don't think it would mean that you wouldn't be able to achieve any results from that bullet. That all the material
there's no doubt that the DNA found on the casings was from more than one person.
Yes, there's no doubt about that. And you can just see it from her table, my lady, because, at some loci, you've got 6 alleles that are listed, and obviously no one person could have contributed 6 alleles.
So take me to that, would you? Just so D, well,
So
1338, yeah,
Yes.
you get the 6, yeah.
yes,
Okay.
so you can see there that some of them, yes, are 5, some of them.
She says it's 3 or more, doesn't
She
she?
says it's 3 or more.
Right.
Yes.
And you say that it's wrong to add that in some ways that a false profile was created because you're adding together different people.
Yes. And then also.
And what was the false profile that was created?
Yes.
I mean, what was it?
Well, it was DNA, which could have been from one contributor who touched one bullet, and DNA from another contributor who touched another bullet. I just addressed my lady's point there about, well, you would assume that the person who did the shooting would have touched all the bullets, and that may be a reasonable assumption. But if that's the case, then it isn't the appellant that did the shooting, because you would obviously have to assume he touched all 6, and he was excluded from 2 of the casings.
Now, these columns at 1790, are those all the potential loci that there are?
Potential alleles.
Alleles that
Yes,
there are?
there are. In fact, the next table, I mean, it's again, if you look at page 1791.
Yes, there seems to be a lot more there.
Yes, well, if you look, there's a lot more tests in this chart than you saw before, but again, it's the same, that the 4 casings we're concerned with are the second from the bottom,
Yes.
the table. And there you see she's listed all these alleles that she said appeared in these mini-filer tests and these identifier tests at each locus.
Well, the purpose of my question was, at Appendix 2, the mini-filer summary table, those show you, of the alleles that he has, which of those were found in the sample. But might there be other columns where there's a 0 for him because he doesn't have that, but actually there were some found in the...
Well, let me take you to those then. So if you move to the next chart, which is 1791, and if you go along the that swab casings row towards the end, and if you come to one, maybe it's first, I shall first deal with the ones where there are just 2 asterisks. They're towards the end of the row.
We're looking at the 4 casings row, are we? Or which row?
Sorry, the swab 4 casings.
Swab 4 casings, yeah.
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 So you can see there are 2 loci towards the end where they've just got asterisks.
Sorry, I can't hear. There are 2...
2 loci towards
I think they're
the...
called loci, but I may be wrong.
The expert told me I got it wrong. It's loci, so I'm trying to use the right word.
So it's the ones with 2 asterisks in T-pox and
Yes,
518.
yes. There is no alleles were seen.
Right.
And then next to that, just moving back along the row, you can see there's an asterisk 15. And if you go up to the appellant's profile, which is 3 from the top,
Sorry, which column are you in?
sorry, we're in VWA.
He's got
Sorry,
8.11.
VWA's 5th from the end, 5th from the right.
Oh, okay. He's got 15.16.
He's got 15 and a 16.
Yeah.
And the 16 is not detected. And the same is true in the next, moving back towards the left, the next column, where there's an asterisk 14.
433.
Yes, 433. Again, if you compare the appellant's profile, there's a 14.2 missing.
And what does the asterisk...
The asterisk means that she sees potential alleles below the threshold.
Right,
But she can't measure them or say what they are.
thank you.
And you can see that also, again, at...
But every person actually has, if you took a swab from them, a figure for each of those columns.
They would have 1 or 2 figures for each of those columns.
They would have,
1 or 2.
well, sorry, they have 2 alleles at each loci.
Yeah, so in each of those columns, there would be, every individual would have one or 2.
Well, if it was a proper sample, they would have 2, would it?
You mean if the casing sample?
No, just if you take a swab from the individual, at a location, they will have 2 alleles.
No, they won't always. They will. They are 2 alleles, but it will look like 1.
Oh, it could be 1. It could look like 1 because it could be replicated.
Exactly.
Yes. So
that's why in that first column, the 1179, at the appellant's profile, she's just put 14, but what that really means is 14, 14.
right. Yeah. Okay.
And if staying with that first column, if I could take you back down to the swab casings, there's a 14 there with an asterisk. So again, she's saying there's possible alleles below the threshold. I'm just going to draw your attention to that because I'm going to come back to it in a moment when we deal with the statistic. So, as I said, she rationalized these different amplification runs by assuming every peak was a true peak, and where they didn't correspond between each other, these different test runs, it just meant the alleles hadn't been detected. So where she saw some alleles in one test run, but not in another, well, that second test run, they just hadn't been detected, but they were really there. And that's why we were talking about reproducibility, why you might do 2 or 3 test runs and see if those alleles appeared more than once.
But would those assumptions sometimes operate to exclude the suspect, or will they always operate to include the suspect?
In the case of a mixture, it's likely to include a suspect because if you assume everything is a true allele and that the ones that you haven't seen from run to run have dropped out, your total number of alleles is going to be larger than any one of those test runs. And obviously, the more alleles there are, the likelihood of falling within that pool is greater.
And whenever you get another reading, you can always explain it by saying, well, that was one of the other contributors.
Exactly, yes, that's it. So, and then what we find when we come to the statistic is she's taken into account the columns that correspond with the appellant, the ones that correspond with the appellant, yes, and ignored the ones that don't. Perhaps I could take you to Dr. Llewellyn's report, because there is another way of trying to rationalize between these two inconsistent runs. And that's at yes, 2641. Actually, 2640. At the bottom there, she's talking about these protocols and procedures that she reviewed, because what the analyst said, her reason for doing this, she said, well, I'm allowed to do it. It's within the operational procedures of my laboratory to form this composite profile. But when Dr. Llewellyn reviewed these procedure manuals and the protocols, there wasn't anything in there about making a composite profile. And the reason why you might have that is that sometimes by carrying out hundreds and hundreds of tests of known samples, you might be able to predict where you're going to have stutter, where you're going to have various artifacts. And that will help you decide what's a true peak and what's not. So
and is that because of something in the particular machine that they're using? Is that... They know, oh yes, this machine always produces a stutter for the allele.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. That sort of helps them. I mean, nowadays, computers, I think, do this, and it's all done by software. But yes, that is what you would do. You would do hundreds and hundreds of tests manually and see where, does stutter always appear at this, or is there a very good chance of it appearing? But that would obviously have to be backed up by data. But if you did that process, then you could have some sort of protocol where you say, well, ignore these, or take into account these, or bear this in mind. And that might allow you to somehow reconcile the 6 different sets of results.
But you say you can never reconcile just one.
Well,
You have to have 2, is that right? And always had to have 2. So one of the results was a 13.
Yes.
Okay, it only appeared once.
Yes.
And you say, well, there you are, that's a golden rule. You can't, you can never say that's a 13 because it only appeared once out of six attempts.
I'm not saying that, my lord. What I'm saying is there are 2 techniques to try and reconcile. One is the reproducibility, where you simply say, well, it only appeared once, therefore it's not a true peak.
Yeah.
And then there's this other method that I was describing where you do hundreds and hundreds of tests on known samples, and you are able to then sort of predict where you're going to get these false peaks. And that helps you then analyze the profile. And that's essentially what she was saying. She was saying, well, I'm allowed to do this. But when those protocols were checked, they were non-existent. So that's what Dr. Llewellyn deals with at the bottom of page 3. She says that it doesn't have any established guidelines for determining which DNA results from multiple electropherograms, that's the test runs, are suitable for developing composite profile comparison, as well as to handle the statistical calculations in these instances. And then she goes on to say that if you're going to do this, established guidelines must be determined through the laboratory's validation studies, and that includes analysing multiple mixtures of known amounts and contributors. And then you would have to put them in your protocol. And in the next paragraph, she says, without a policy in the forensic biology procedure manual and validation studies, the laboratory should not have created a composite DNA profile. And then she says this is not a new guideline. It was expected practice in forensic DNA analysis for years. So those are the two ways that you can try to reconcile the different test runs. As I said, Dr. Llewellyn and Dr. Crane's view is this sample was inconclusive. It wasn't, you couldn't interpret it. There was too much variation between the test runs.
Was the witness statement referred to there one that was produced in the actual proceedings of Ms. Zuleger?
The statement.
Yeah, there's a reference to a witness statement which claims that the ability to use the composite profile had been validated. That was in paragraph 9.
Yes, sorry, paragraph 9.
Yes.
Yes.
What is that a witness statement that was made in the criminal proceedings themselves, or is it a later witness statement?
A later witness statement, and it's on page 2628. It starts, this was in response to this appeal.
I see.
And in response to Dr. Crane's criticisms.
I see. So our answer, she gave an answer to that which proved to be false.
Proved to be false. What is also interesting about what Dr. Llewellyn says at paragraph 5, 2639, she says the sample was amplified 2 times. And then at the bottom, she says halfway through.
Sorry, which page?
2639.
39.
And at the bottom of paragraph 5, midway through, she says, this profile, this is one of the runs in the identifier system, exhibited potential alleles below the laboratory's interpretation threshold, and they should have been considered inconclusive. It should not have been used for comparison to any DNA standards. And then in paragraph 6...
Before we go on from that, she had 2 amplified runs of the amplification system.
The amplification
and one of them should have been discarded, is that right?
That's what should normally happen, is that you would choose which... I don't know how you choose it, my lord, because I'm not an expert, but
right.
In reality, you'd only use one. You wouldn't make a composite of all of them.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't normally get this kind of variability between the runs. I mean, normally they would come out identical because the DNA sample is a good quality sample.
But here she meshed them together.
Mesh them together. So the net effect that in paragraph 5 and 6, what she's saying is that each of those test runs by themselves should have been considered inconclusive and no DNA comparison should have been made.
Does that appear in paragraph 13.1 of your...
Well, this is no, my lord, because we never raised the lack of protocols as an actual complaint.
Right.
What we were talking about
Yeah.
was what she did in place of those protocols. And it was her reasons,
Yeah.
and that's what resulted in Llewellyn having a look.
Yeah.
But it falls under the same umbrella, because what we said is, well, she did this type of analysis, and that's what she did in the absence of all these protocols.
Well, point Roman 2 is about the multiple amplifications and the aggregation of results.
Yes, we did complain about the multiple amplifications and the composite profile.
Yeah.
So, as I said, when you are determining whether someone is included or in a mixture or not, you can't determine it in the way that you would with a single profile, such as if there's one allele that doesn't match, that person's excluded. In a mix, there are going to be alleles that don't match. And so the only way you can decide whether someone is excluded or included in that mixture is to look at what's missing. So if you actually did compare all those suspects that had their profiles compared, some of those alleles would have matched with the sample, but some of them wouldn't. And so it's how you decide whether someone is included or not is basically by what's not there. And we know that at 2 alleles, the appellant's DNA, where there was only 1 of his alleles that were detected, and his wasn't there. So that's what gave rise to the Dr. Crane's opinion that this could have given grounds for exclusion.
And so going back to the graphs attached to Dr. Crane's report, which of the 2 alleles are we referring to?
Yes, so, yes, actually, if you look at page 1791, and again, if you look at the swab casings row,
Look at the top row. Yeah.
The swab casings,
swab casings, which is bottom, 1 up from the bottom.
1791.
If you go towards the, well, I don't know which way is easier, but if you go along that row, you will come to an asterisk 14.
The first one.
Not the first one, that's something...
The next one.
Yes, the next one. And then next to it, an asterisk 15.
Yeah.
Yes.
And those are the 2 loci where there was not full correspondence, because the appellant had 2 different alleles at each of these loci. And they're not reflected in this sample. Now, Ms. Sugala, she concluded that the appellant was included in this mixture, this sample mixture. But in order to do that, what she would have had to have presumed is that those alleles that aren't represented, the appellant's alleles that aren't represented in the sample, just dropped out and weren't detected.
Sorry, he had 14 and 14.2.
And if you go down to the sample, there's just a 14 there.
Okay, so the 14.2 isn't good enough.
Well, the 14.2 isn't there in the swab casings. So you would say, well, if the 14.2 is not there, then maybe he didn't contribute to this sample.
But she assumed it just hadn't shown up in
She
the
just
test.
assumed it hadn't shown up. And, I mean, the point I make about that, I do realise that there are some alleles of detection below there, but it indicated that there were alleles below threshold. But the point is, nothing was said to the jury about that. That he was included as long as you presume that where his alleles should have been, they just didn't show up. I was going to move on to the statistical calculations and how those are achieved. So
this is the one in 46 million?
Yes, my lady. So that's called a common probability of inclusion statistic. And what it means is that you have all these, this pool of alleles, and you're measuring the likelihood of someone falling within that pool of alleles, theirs falling within it. So that's what it's supposed to be, because you don't know which contributed each allele. You have to look at all of them and just look at the probability of falling within that pool of alleles. And so Dr. Train talks about this, that there are 2 conditions to doing a CPI statistic. And the first, and the golden rule, is there's no possibility of alleles that have dropped out.
Sorry, can you say that again?
So there's 2 conditions for the CPI statistic. The first is there must be no possibility of alleles having dropped out if you're going to use that locus in your calculation.
And when you say drop out?
Not detected.
Not detected. So those 2 columns that you've just shown us are dropouts.
Well, that's what you would think, because she's also said potential alleles below the threshold. Yes. So that is a clear indication that you've got allele dropout.
So that of itself should have excluded the possibility of giving the one in 46 million.
Well, what she did was she just ignored those results and basically looked at the remaining 9 and just did a common probability of inclusion in those nine loci, not the whole.
Oh, she excluded those loci
Yes.
where there were.
Yes. So she just left them out of the calculation and just concentrated on the 9 that did correspond with the appellant's profile. So what?
You said there were 2 golden rules.
Yeah, so the second golden rule is knowing the number of contributors. And the reason you need to know the number of contributors is because in order to decide whether alleles have just not shown up, there's been dropout at each locus, you need to know how many alleles to expect. So if you think it's a 2-person mixture, you're going to expect 4 alleles at each locus. If it's a 3-person, you're going to expect up to 6. I mean, you won't necessarily get 6, because some might be shared. Some might have 2 alleles that are the same at that locus. But in any event, you're looking for up to 6, and the other one, if you have less contributors, you're going to look for less. And so what it can do is it can cause an expert to mix dropout of alleles. So the pool, then, is said to be smaller than it actually is, the pool of alleles.
Could you guard against that by assuming the sort of maximum number of contributors that it might be, and doing it on that basis?
You would, but you would have to make that presumption clear, my lord.
Yeah, no, I see that.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, you could do that, and it should come up in the calculation. So you could say, well, I'm going to overestimate the number of alleles, so there are more and more. And yes, what you would end up doing is you may well include people who are not actually really included, but it should show up in the statistic, because the statistic wouldn't reflect the all those alleles being so rare. It would obviously wouldn't be 1 in 46 million.
No, I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, but it's still a problem, though, in the sense that if you're going to say someone's included in a profile, in a sample, then if you've widened the pool of alleles, if you assume that there's a maximum number of contributors, or you've narrowed the pool of alleles, you're just going to get a statistic that's meaningless. It doesn't mean anything, it's not accurate.
But if you widen the pool of alleles, in this case, it would be up to 6, isn't that right? 6 contributors?
Yes, at least. Now, she doesn't know exactly, so...
At least.
And I can show you that in her report, in fact, there's one locus, there is 7 alleles, which would suggest a 4-person mixture. So at least 3, I think she's presumably covering both bases.
Does this have a dramatic effect on the percentage chances?
It can. It can.
And in this case, how much?
Well, yes. Well, maybe I'll come to that, my lord. I want to, if I could just go through this the way I've structured it, and then I'll come to that. So, so basically that's what. So I've told you that she took into account just the 9 and left out the alleles that didn't correspond to the appellant. But even in that 9, she knew that she had alleles that just hadn't appeared, or at least it was unreasonable to assume that there were alleles that hadn't appeared. And if you go back to that chart at 1791, if you look at that first column again, where there is this is the swab casings, second from the bottom. First column, you see there's a 14 asterisks. So the asterisks there, possible alleles below threshold. So
Sorry, the asterisk there indicates that there were other alleles
below the threshold.
Yes.
Yes. So she can see there's genetic material there, but she can't measure it. The only one she's been able to measure is the 14. And so what must have happened at that locus is the allele, whatever it is, just hasn't been detected. Or more than one, it could be more than one allele, but whatever hasn't been, whatever that those possible alleles are, they haven't been able, she hasn't been able to detect them. But nonetheless, even though there was clear evidence of dropout at this locus, so alleles not being detected, she took that into account in the statistical calculation. And as I said, there are two rules. One is there's no possibility of allele dropout, and the other one is knowing the number of contributors, because then you can better assess.
But the figure in the column for him, the 14,
Yes.
we should read that as 1414. Yeah.
But it's a correspondence, because with low amounts of DNA, you can't take into account the peaks. There might have been some way of analysing it more sophisticatedly if it was a good sample.
And, just on the same point, all the way across, for his sample, the next one would be 2828. The fourth one would be 1111. Is that right?
My lord,
So Julian Washington, his first entry on his sample is 14,
yes.
and that should be 1414. Is that
Yes,
right?
it should be, sorry.
And the next one should be 2828. Yeah.
I mean, I think this is just their shorthand, but that's
Yeah.
what it means. So in her CPI calculation, she's reached rule 1, which is that there should be no possibility of allele dropout, because she's taken into account this first locus here with the 14 asterisks. And you'll note that, I think it's already been noted, that if you go upwards, you can see it corresponds with the appellants. And then if you go to box 5, there's also a 40 swab casings, box 5. You can see that that also corresponds to the appellant, it's a 14. But what she's had to assume there is she has to assume, for the purposes of the calculation, she's got a full set of alleles, and there's no possibility of allele dropout. She's had to assume that every contributor, 3+, has a 14 and a 14, which Dr. Crane considers unreasonable because that's just unlikely. And so what she should have...
I'm really sorry, I'm being slow, I'm not following.
Not at all.
So the 144358 has only detected 14 for one allele.
Which page are you on, my lady?
The one that you're just doing.
Oh, right, sorry, 171.
I think it's a 14 and a 14. It's again the
Looking at the
shorthand.
first column, the 1179.
No, not in the first column. In the 358 column,
The fifth column.
box 5, you just said, there's
Yeah.
a 14.
Yes,
Should we read that as 14 and 14 or just 14?
just 14 for the sample, because what you will see on the graph is just one peak.
Just one peak of 14.
Yes, but if you saw that in an individual's profile, you would see still just one peak, but you would know that because you have to have two alleles, they would be a 14 and a 14.
So you read that as a 14 and a 14.
Not in the casings, you don't.
Why not?
No, not in the
Why-
casing.
why not?
but in
Because you
here.
don't know if it's two alleles or one.
Okay.
But for him, you do
would
read
know.
it as...
Exactly, yes.
Because he must
Yeah,
have those
okay.
two alleles.
You've got to have one from each parent.
Right.
Right.
But so what would you infer from that? That there is, he's got 14 and 14, and so there's dropout, and therefore it shouldn't count as part of the statistical.
Exactly.
Right.
Because, if there are there should be 6 alleles.
Yeah.
Up to 6, I should say, but, saying there's just one is unreasonable.
Yeah.
And you can see there are some loci where there are quite high numbers of alleles.
I'm sorry, I'm being slow on the uptake.
No, my lord. It's obviously my way of explaining it.
Box 5 again. You're taking the swab casings. You find that there is a 14. Why doesn't the 14 hide another 14?
It may well do.
But what are you saying is the possible interpretation of that single 14? What are the possible different
What are they?
interpretations?
Yeah, so
and what has she assumed? Which of the interpretations has she assumed of the possible
She's
ones?
assumed that all contributors have a 14 and a 14, which is why you only see a 14 peak coming up.
Right. And that she assumed that it wasn't a situation in which she failed to detect
Yes.
a reading, an allele, yes, I see.
That's right. So she's not saying it's, some have dropped out, because if she says that, then she can't take
use it.
that locus.
So an equally plausible assumption would have been that there's alleles there that haven't been detected, so this is a dropout result.
Yes, that would have been a reasonable conclusion.
Yeah, equally reasonable.
But the
I think Dr. Crane said
Probably more reasonable, you say, because it's unlikely that all the alleles drop
it's
out.
just so unlikely.
And certainly doesn't meet the criminal standard of proof.
Well, yeah, yes,
So it wouldn't, yes.
So with the sample names, are the people whose names have got S next to them, are they suspects. And Burgess is the victim?
yes, that's right, my lady. So
Right,
she
so
knows
we
in
can
advance.
see that some of those have got, they've got all sorts of things,
Yes.
14s and 17s and, right.
So they will correspond in some ways with the sample and not in others. And really, she's taken the view that since the appellant, according to her, corresponds at 11, then he's included as a possible contributor to the sample. I have actually counted, and Maxwell Hayward has 8 loci that completely correspond with the sample, but he's not included.
But there's nobody there for looking at 1PO. There's no one on the list who's got a 7. So where's that 7 come from?
Another contributor, an unknown contributor. These were just the suspects. Mr. Outerbridge and Mr. Hayward and Mr. Smith, I mean, they were released. I mean, they weren't charged with any offence.
Oh, I see.
So it would be an unknown contributor. 7.
The individual who sold the shell casings,
Well, yes, quite possibly. Yes, quite possibly.
amongst other potential.
So
Going back to the one in 46 million, then I think.
yes, so we're going back to the 1 in 40. So, as I said, in order to make that statistic, you've got to make sure you've got all the contributors' alleles. Otherwise, it's going to mislead. It's going to suggest that the pool of alleles is rarer than it actually is. And then the last thing I want to show that she also did, if you go back to the identifier of 1789, and you can see, so if we look at identifier 2, you can see there's a row of alleles that have...
Sorry, you have to help me. 1789.
9. If you can see there's, in the first column, you've got the appellant's alleles, and you've got identifier 1, which is 1 test run. And then the next one is identifier 2, which is another test run.
Sorry, we're in the first column,
Bottom row,
bottom row.
identifier 2. No, I think you've got not the right table. It's 1789. It's the
Colourful.
it's just the colour. It's the colour table.
The coloured one, sorry.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you can
you
see...
start again then, please, on 1789?
Yes. So going to identifier 2, I'll just take that one
Yes.
as an example. You can see a whole list of alleles and there. But then if you compare it to the minifiler, which we've already done, a lot more then show up. That's the next page, 1790. So in order to say, well, this identifier 2 test is still an accurate result, she would have to presume that all those extra alleles that came up with minifiler dropped out, weren't detected.
In the identifier.
In the identifier,
Earlier you said she should have just plumped for one or the other. She shouldn't have used both.
well, I think our position is that she should never
Shouldn't have
even
used any,
try
no.
to interpret it, yes. But, I mean, that's what you would do. You wouldn't make a composite profile like this.
Again, I'm sorry, you're comparing the column 179 on
Yeah,
the
yeah.
identifier.
You don't need to look at the precise numbers, my lord. What I just wanted to,
Yeah.
the point I'm making is that
Yeah.
there were obviously more in minifiler that came up than in identifier. And so in order to say, well, this is still an accurate test, I can still use it,
Yeah.
she would have to have assumed all those extra alleles that came up with minifiler dropped out, so they weren't detected.
Because these are the same alleles being looked for in both tests.
Well,
Well,
yes,
it's just
the same
measuring,
sample.
they're both attempts to measure the sample.
Well, sample, they're both the sample. So that the minifiler covers 8 loci. The identifier covers 15. And we know that there were 2 loci where there was no detection of alleles at all. And there were 2 that she ignored because they didn't correspond with the appellant. So that's 4. And her reason for doing that is that she's saying the alleles must have dropped out. So that's why she's ignored them. So if you add the 8 and the 4 together, it means that 12 of these loci in the identifier test kit on her presumptions experience dropout. And as I said, you can't take into account a locus if there's a possibility of dropout. So she's assumed there's dropout amongst all of these, but then when it comes to the remaining ones that aren't in the minifiler test, she's assumed there's a complete set of alleles. So that's, again, unreasonable an assumption to make. And the whole process seems to have been maximized to correspond as much as possible to the appellant. So then when you've got your full set of alleles, and as I said, she's only taken into account the 9, that's how you come up with the statistic. You just multiply the frequencies of the appearance of each of the alleles in the sample.
I think you gave at an earlier stage the witness statement that she put in prior to the trial taking place. Could you remind me whereabouts we find that?
I don't know if that's in the
Or is it,
I think what you showed, it was one she made in response to the criticisms.
right. Was there a witness statement served in the criminal proceedings at the time?
890.
Yes.
890.
It was just that little report that we saw, was it?
890.
Yes, there was firstly the report, and then there was a little statement that said how she took the samples. That was it, just saying she took it from all 4 cases. So those were the 2. There was nothing else, no detail about her analysis in them. It was just the report that dealt with her actual analysis.
But that 1 in 46 million figure was given to the jury.
Absolutely.
And yes, it was given to the jury, and
It was also given in the wrong way to the jury.
it was. But I think the problems are more fundamental.
Yes.
Yeah, yes. Yes, that figure was given to the jury, and of course, on its face, it seems highly probative, the evidence. But really, what we say is it was meaningless. It had no representation of the truth. There was nothing scientific about this measurement. So there have been heavy criticisms of this kind of statistic for the reasons I've said, because what happens is analysts attempted to include certain loci that are convenient to the result they want to obtain and ignore other ones that are inconvenient to the result that they want to obtain. I'm not suggesting in this country, but this is in the US, this is where that happened. And so what happened was the President's Council of Advisors did a thorough review of forensic evidence in the US. It wasn't just related to DNA, but that was one of the main areas that they looked into. And they looked into this CPI statistic. And if I could just take you to that report. And it really will sum up just what I'm trying very badly to explain, which is a 1948. You can see there's a title there, Analysis of Complex Mixture Samples.
Whose report is this?
Yes, so this is the Executive Office of the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. in the US, which was highly influential on forensic practitioners in the US. We in this jurisdiction, my lord, we never used a CPI statistic. We considered it too unreliable, so it was never used. Yes, so if you go to the last paragraph, it states DNA analysis of complex mixture, defined as mixtures with more than 2 contributors, is inherently difficult, and even more for small amounts of DNA. Such samples result in a DNA profile that superimposes multiple individual DNA profiles. Interpreting a mixed profile is different for multiple reasons. Each individual may contribute 1, 2, 1, or 0. I'm not quite sure why it's mentioned 0, unless it's because if there was some sort of way it wasn't detected. The alleles may overlap with one another. The peak heights may differ considerably owing to the differences in the amount and state of preservation of the DNA from each source, and the stutter peaks that surround the alleles, which are common artifacts of DNA, the DNA amplification process, can obscure alleles that are present or suggest alleles that are not present. It is often impossible to tell with certainty which alleles are present in the mixture or how many separate individuals contributed to the mixture, let alone accurately to inform the DNA profile of each individual. And she didn't go as far as that. She didn't try to identify the DNA profile of each individual. And then just leaving the next paragraph and moving to the next one, which is headed Subjective Interpretation of Complex Mixtures. Initial approaches to the interpretation of complex mixtures relied on subjective judgment by examiners, together with the use of simplified statistical methods such as the combined probability of inclusion, which was used in this case. These approaches are problematic because subjective choices made by examiners, such as about which alleles to include in the calculation, can dramatically alter the result and lead to inaccurate answers. And what I tried to show you was the subjective decisions that she made in this case, even when sometimes it was unreasonable to make that kind of assumption. And that's what it's complaining about here. And then finally, just on 1951, the fourth paragraph down.
1951?
Yes, 1951, fourth paragraph down. The report concludes, in summary, the interpretation of complex DNA mixtures with a CPI statistic has been an inadequately specified and thus inappropriately subjective method. As such, the method is clearly not foundationally valid. And, sorry, thank you. This led to the phasing out of the CPI statistics, and software now can handle more complex DNA profiles. Techniques have advanced considerably. We no longer, in this country, we've never used it, but we use likelihood ratios. In the US, they now use likelihood ratios instead of CPI statistics. So it's a method that's no longer employed.
So how would you express that in a likelihood ratio then?
You would say the likelihood that the appellant is contributed in this mixture to the likelihood that it's 3 unknown or 3 or more unknown contributors. And you compare the likelihood of each. So these complaints were obviously put to Ms. Suliger, and she said, no, my approach is not suspect-centric, because what it appears that she's done is she's used the appellant's profile to interpret the results. In fact, maybe I'll just read what Dr. Crane says about it, because he sums it up rather well. Yes, he says, and this is
Where are we now?
1785, paragraph 19. he says, just as it is inappropriate to generate a CPI statistic for test results where ALEC dropout may have occurred, it is also inappropriate to use information relating to a person of interest DNA profile as a guide to the interpretation of results from an evidence sample. This appears to have been the approach of Trinity DNA Solutions, where alleles at each locus corresponding to Julian Washington's genotype have been detected. Trinity DNA Solutions appears to have presumed that all alleles have been detected at that locus. Where alleles corresponding to Mr. Washington's genotype are absent at a locus, allelic dropout has been presumed, and those loci have been excluded from the statistic. Using information derived from a person of interest reference sample to determine where allelic dropout has occurred constitutes a circular argument. It already assumes what it seeks to prove. You have to presume that the appellant's alleles have dropped out. Such circular reasoning is subjective and non-scientific, and it fails to consider the alternative possibility that a person of interest allele has not been observed simply because they have not contributed DNA to the sample.
Now, does this criticism appear in paragraph 13 of your written case?
Yes, it does.
I'm just trying to just see.
Little 5, I think.
Is it little 5, is it?
Yes. Let me just...
Number 3, I think, perhaps.
Yes.
And it's
I remember reading it. I just can't just can't see where.
Suspect-centric circular reasoning.
Yes.
Yes. So we start out with the composite sample having been taken from all 4 bullet casings. Then we go to in number 2, we talk about the multiple amplification and her aggregation of all of the test results, which risked her having included alleles that weren't really alleles. And then we talk about the suspect-centric circular reasoning.
Yes.
That's at little 3, and we refer to paragraph 19 of Dr. Crane's report.
It's an assumption that she did that,
Yeah.
because there's no other explanation.
Exactly. There's no other explanation, but it seems odd, bizarre, for there to be an explanation if that wasn't it.
Yeah.
And I can actually show you where she has taken a suspect-centric approach in relation to other material that she's tested. I asked that we include another of her reports in the supplementary bundle. If we could go to, in fact, page 2.
This is the first supplementary bundle.
This is a second supplementary bundle, yes.
This is 2 of 76.
No, this is the second one. I don't think it's been added to the, this is a separate bundle.
Yes, no, it's
Page 2 of 76 pages.
76 pages. It just helps
Oh,
us
yes, sorry.
to identify
Yes,
which
it
bundle.
is.
That we're in the right one.
Yes, you are, my lady, that's right. There's only 2 documents in this one. And the first one is a report that she did on the 18th of March 2013, and it relates to other items in this case that she tested. And if we turn to page 4, if you look at the sample there, it's 13, at the top there, top line, 13004001. That's the sample that she's looking at. And then you can see she's given 3 different statistics. She's given 1 statistic for Stephen Burgess, another statistic for Julian Washington, and another statistic for Anthony Smith. So she's given 3 different common probabilities of inclusion for 3 different suspects. But the common probability of conclusion, it takes into account all the alleles that are in the pot, all the alleles that are in the mixture. But she's obviously only taken into account some with 1 suspect and others with another suspect. And you can actually see this in her table. You go to page 11.
So she's tailored the calculation according to which suspect she's looking
Yes,
at.
indeed. And you can actually see it it's even more stark if you go to page 11. If you, at the top, you've got the combined probability of inclusion figure. And just along from that, towards the right, you can see it's the same sample. It's 13000401. And then if you go to back to the actual locus column of loci that she's listed there, and look at, say, the first one, where she says there's been alleles at the locus. If you look at those, you just need to look at them, but you don't need to study them too carefully. But if you then go to page 13 and look at Antigone Smith and what she did, look at the same column, they're different alleles. So she's basically tailored her statistical analysis to the suspect.
And there's no logical reason for attributing one allele to one suspect as opposed to another suspect.
Unless you want to maximize the chances of that, of the impression that the appellant is, the statistics are, it's rarer for the appellant to fall within that pool of alleles than it really is. So, my lord, I was going to deal with the fact that it was a sample of all 4 bullets, but I think we've covered that, so I don't need to do that. The other point that I do want to make is to do with expert evidence generally in Bermuda. And as we can see here, this is a report that, whatever it is, it's not impartial. And the principles of or the duties of an expert witness to the court are not, they're not controversial.
Is there some sort of declaration signed, like there would be here, to say I've been advised about my principle, I have to be independent, and etc.?
No, my lord. So in Bermuda, and this is why I raised the point, and why I do think it needs restating what those obligations are, because in Bermuda, you do not have the equivalent of the criminal procedure rules, which set out the duties on an expert witness. And you do not have the equivalent of the CPS guidance for expert witnesses, which again sets it out very clearly what the duties of an expert witness are.
And do we have the guidance in the bundle?
We don't, my lord, but we can provide it.
If you could.
Yes. But the duties on an expert witness in the US are different. They don't have any duties, in fact. It's the duties to their client only. And it appears that, because it's not just this, we've come across this before, this is not just Ms. Zuliger flouting her obligations to the court. It seems very much that the experts are not aware of them. And
well, he must have a duty to be honest wherever you are.
Yes, but you'd be surprised, my lord, about how close to the wind some of them actually sail.
But then how does it work? Is it then that the defence, the prosecution, well, yes, but the prosecution have access to the samples and their experts use them, but if the expert does not have a duty to be impartial, how do samples get into the hands of the defendant so that their experts can analyse them?
Well, I think that it's automatic in the US. I think it's much simpler than it is here. I think it's expected that the defence would have their own expert too, and they'd fight it out between each other.
But where does their expert get their samples from?
Oh, from the prosecution. They would use, it's one of the things that it's just in forensic analysis, what you do is you use 2/3 of the sample, you reserve 1/3 for the defence.
Ah, okay, that's the answer to my question. Right.
Yes, so that was the point I wanted to make, that...
And who pays for the defence to have an expert?
That legal aid will pay for it.
It does?
Yes, it does. But the problem in this case is that you saw the report. There's nothing. There's no mention of any ambiguity, or even at the fact that the DNA was a complex sample. There's nothing there to indicate that it's a problem. This has only been unpicked by an expert at this level of proceedings. There was nothing really to indicate to counsel, well, there's something wrong with this DNA sample. It looks like it speaks for itself. And so that's why I think there might be an issue, my lord, in relation to expert evidence in Bermuda, because all this was hidden from view. You wouldn't be able to know what had gone on unless you had an expert go through it. And there was nothing on the face of the report to alert the counsel on either side that it wasn't a perfectly valid and scientifically sound report.
So it's not routine for defence to obtain their own analysis,
it's not.
Even though legal aid will cover it
and
they get a third of the
If you can justify it, legal aid will cover it.
Oh, you have to justify it.
Yes, you do. But the point is, in DNA results are often thought to just speak for themselves.
If you've got a clear result or something, you're
Yes.
not going to get the funding to get your own report.
Well, this is it, exactly. There's going to be no dispute about it.
Yeah.
So there's no subjectivity, for example, in analysing a single profile involved, because you've just got one set of alleles from one
Mr.
contributor.
Washington's defence was that he wasn't there at all.
Was that he wasn't there, he wasn't the shooter, he wasn't there, and that he hadn't touched any ammunition.
And he had an alibi.
Yes, that's right. And a witness in support of his alibi.
But where in Bermuda is the law about experts located, if anywhere?
Yes, it's just, they would have to rely on English case law.
Okay.
So I've set
There's
out...
no Bermuda case that has addressed the duties of experts that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of. No, Mr. Keynes is not aware of one either. Not that I'm aware of, my lord. And obviously it's not the case that all experts are not going to be impartial, but it's just that
No,
we
of course
notice
not,
there's a
but they
tendency.
don't make a declaration in their report
Yes.
and so forth.
Yes, there is one in the statements in response to this appeal, which I assume might be something to do with
Well, we
coming up to
see
this
that
level.
at 26.
But there were...
2628, for example, where there is a declaration about the overriding duty owed to the court. It's not in the initial report at 1890.
And I have to say, when I saw this, I was very surprised, because that's the first time I've ever seen it in a Bermudian case. It's a declaration like that hasn't come from a UK expert.
And Mr. Crane's report, which was prepared for the purposes of the Bermudian proceedings, also has such a declaration.
Yes, it does.
That's,
Yes.
1781.
Because there is a duty on the parties to obviously make sure that their experts know what their duties are and that they've complied with them. So obviously Dr. Crane is told what his duties are.
the Icarian reefer is...
Yes, exactly.
Is that still the
gold standard.
gold standard, not, or is there a more
Yes,
up-to-date authority?
there's a more recent case that applies to criminal proceedings, and that's the case of Harris. I can give you the reference for it. It might just be easier to...
Well, perhaps if a copy could be sent into us, could yes, or do we have a copy in the?
We actually do have a copy already. I mean, it sets out some of the duties of an expert witness, and then there are other things.
You say they're in the criminal procedure rules
They're
now.
the main one that we would
the
use here.
2006 case?
Harris, sounds like it. Sorry, Manny, let me just find out find where it is.
I think it is. It's Harris, Rock, Cherry and Folder.
Yeah.
Page 2227.
Thank you, 2227. And there it sets out that there's a duty of impartiality on the expert, that duty overrides the person, the duty to the person instructing them, that they should be transparent about their results. So any presumptions that they've relied upon should be stated. There is, I can't remember if this is in Harris or not, but we have provided a list of cases that deal with expert evidence in our case. There are other duties, such as if you're going to deviate from standard practice, you should say so. So in fact, the criminal procedurals that we have here and use, you can find them in the case law. They're just sometimes individually or not fully set out in one case. But the main authority is Harris. So, my lord, that was what I was going to address you on this morning. Is there anything else that you would like me to go over?
Thank you very much, Ms. Cliff-Matthews. You've brought it in within the suggested time. Mr. Pearce, is there anything further on behalf of the appellant? Mr. Pools, would you like to start at 2?
My Lord, yes. Although just by way of, I don't propose taking up too much of your ladyship's time, but probably longer than 4 minutes.
Yes. We'll rise now.
I'm
sorry, I can't. We can do that over lunch. We're coming back to.
We're coming.
Yeah.
Do you want to identify matters now?
No, she's happy not to.
Thank you. We'll rise now. We'll sit again. Thank you very much.